Hello and welcome to the Performance Podcast episode 2 with me, Josh and Darren Firth. We thank you for your likes and subscription and that based on the first episode. And yeah, like we said, we're going to be continuing this hopefully every week. And we're going to start to talk about now some different subjects. Got a dog roaming about in the background. He'll come in a little bit, little Logie. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to talk about specific goals in terms of like how you're going to train for specific sports or whatever. Okay, so let's just start it. So if you're also like a runner, okay, you need to work on certain mechanics of the body. So mechanics are what the body's functionality is and what it actually does. Now with a runner, you know, we've got to look at things such as like lunging and stuff like that, and obviously power squats and things, and different fibres in the muscle as well. So if you're a short distance runner, like a 100-metre runner, you want explosive power, okay, fast twitch fibres mixed with slow twitch fibres. What are they? They're different fibres in your actual muscle that actually do different things. So slow twitch is more strength and power, fast twitch is sort of like more aerobic base. But a lot of people just concentrate on their actual specific thing they're doing. So let's talk about 100-metre runner again. If my hair's not cut out. Quite cool. Otherwise, they just run. So that sounds a bit obvious, but they just train for their 100 metres. No, they don't. Okay, they do other things as well. Okay, and they train well past their 100 metres as well. So if I'm going to be a 100-metre runner, I wouldn't just do 100 metres all the time. I'd do 200 metres and try and keep the same time. I'd do 400 metres. Things like that. Okay, I do long distance, but the hypertrophy side of things is super important. So it's kind of like we need an equal balance in the body as well. So a lot of people think they have to train one particular muscle group to be for that particular sport, okay, and not worry about anything else, which is a really bad thing because then they become unbalanced. If you look at people like Christie, if you know who he was, sorry. Or let's talk about Usain Bolt. Okay, if you look at his physique, it's an so it's an all-round physique, and that's a good thing to do so they don't become disbalanced. But training for your specific goal or your specific requirement, training for the specific thing you're doing, important to understand the mechanics, right? So mechanics, as I just said, what the actual movement is that you're doing. So if I'm a runner, my actual mechanics for that are strides, lunge-based things, okay? So you wouldn't just do the standard strides, you go well past the stride. So if I was to do a standard stride, do you want to see if I'm in the shot there, Josh? Sorry mate, make sure because no one's doing the camera.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so if I'm a runner, I run. This just gets down a bit clearer. So I make sure I perform a lot of lunge-based movements, okay, with weighted lunges as well to push my fibres past on what they should be capable of, so they develop more, they get stronger more. So a lunge, okay, this is a standard lunge. There's the mechanics of a lunge, okay, and what we make sure we're doing is we're engaging all the muscles that you're going to be using through that particular movement for your particular goal, or your particular kind of like sport and such. So if I look at a lunge here, okay, I have pressure through my heel, I'm activating my quad, my hamstring is activating, my glute is activating, my back is over, my bum muscle, okay, so everything's 90 degrees. I'm putting loads of stress on them muscle groups I'm going to be training. So I wouldn't just run, I'd work them mechanics as well, and I'd work them hard. Hypertrophy, okay, so I make them stronger, faster, and I'd hit every single kind of fibre in there, as I've already said. So don't be kind of like specifically just training for your events. If you're, say, a marathon runner, don't just go out and do marathons. Train past that, train hypertrophy, so squats, lunges, the particular muscle groups, but also keep everything else in time, so your upper body as well. Don't be disbalanced. Okay, if you look at swimmers, they're quite disbalanced if you actually look at them. So they have really wide shoulders, flat chest, and like medium backs and stuff. That's not a great thing to a point. Maybe they're a bit more streamlined, which way around, okay, that's it. Maybe they're a bit more streamlined, but if they made their bodies more balanced, they get that extra bit that other performers don't, or other fitness athletes don't. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, you want to be having, like you said there, a clear goal for obviously training towards your specific requirement or sport or whatever we just said their goal. Because otherwise, if you haven't got a clear vision or a clear plan, you're kind of not essentially wasting your time, but you're not getting the most out of your time in the gym. So training towards your certain goal, and like Darren said, their sport specific is the most important thing, because obviously that's how you're going to improve, that's how you're going to speed up the process, and you should get there tons and tons faster.
Yeah, okay. And it's like, we're just talking about runners and stuff at the moment, okay? That's a performance-based sport, so i.e. most sports are, right? They just generally are, but if you've got to look about your nutrition as well, okay? So we don't just think about just eating a bit of protein, X, Y, and Z. You want to think about nutrient timings. We talked about this last week, I think we did, about nutrient timings and combinations and when the body requires something, and actually not worrying about weight loss. So if you worry about weight loss, if you're in a performance sport, you're not going to perform very well, okay? We worry more about performance. You don't want to be putting unnecessary weight on unless you're a power lifter, in which case you're going to put weight on. But if we talk about a runner, they don't want tons of weight on them, but they need to be in a place where their body's going to perform really well with their nutrition. So the best thing to do with that, in terms of, if we're going to talk about protein, fats and carbs, where's the best place to put a carbohydrate? I do believe I talked about this last week, around your workouts, okay? It's an easy energy source for the body. Now, if you're someone that's like let's say you're trying to think in terms of like what I call tough mudders or something like that, where your interval sort of stuff up and down and things like that. Yeah, still put carbs in the mix, but also make sure you have fats in the mix as well, and more sustainable energy source. Carbohydrates burn off really quickly in the body. Look at it a bit like this, right? We've got a bit of paper, look at that as carbohydrates. We've got some coal, look at that as your fats, okay? I burn that paper really easy, but it goes off really quick as well. My finger, my ring. Yeah. So we look at coal, when we set lights to that, it burns for a lot longer. So we want both energy sources in the body. What's the main macronutrient we're missing? Protein, okay? That's your repair process in your endocrine system. So that without that, your hormones don't function very well, okay? So main thing is you make sure you've got all the nutrients in there and plenty of them before you perform. And afterwards, okay? Now the thing we like to do here is if for unnecessary weight loss, after your workouts, the body will generally look for glycogen cell replenishment. Okay, that's where you've actually depleted a lot of the glycogen or carbohydrates out of your cells and out of your system. And it won't really look for fats at that point in time unless you're in a ketosis state. So don't run around. But we're not going to talk about ketosis. So after a workout, you generally would leave your fats alone. This is the reason why. What will happen is your cortisol levels, which will be your stress hormone, will be really high. Okay, at that point, your body will look for carbs. And carbs lower the cortisol level. Carbs lower the cortisol levels really quick. They do a very good job of that, and the body will be looking for that. And plus, they replenish glycogen cells really quickly. Fats don't do any of that. Okay, so after you perform, you want to make sure you've got fast-absorbing carbs with complex carbs. What fast-absorbing carbs? Things like bananas, apples, things that are sweet. Okay, green banana is more complex, yellow banana is complex and sugary. Brown banana is more kind of like just sugar. It's fermenting. Okay, started to ferment. Anything that's sweet is sugary, but we need complex as well. We also need it of a lean protein. Okay, so like whey protein is easier to absorb in proteins. Things like high protein yogurts, but more like whey protein, better protein base in there. It's got a better amino acid profile. What are amino acids? Amino acids are protein broken down from different protein sources, turn into amino acids so it can be absorbed into the body. Anyhow, carbohydrates after, sugars will give you an instant spike out of the pancreas, open up all your cells and replenish glycogen cells really quickly. And it comes down fast as well with sugar. So we need a complex to come up behind it to keep the cells open, to keep pushing nutrients in and keep cortisol levels in check. Okay, so this is performance-based stuff. But if you're in a weight loss thing, don't be if you're a performance person. You can weight loss around it, but coming up to your performance state, you can carb backload as well. So if you're going to be kind of like going on a marathon, don't knock the camera. Come here. Right, okay, so if you're going to be doing a marathon, you carb backload as well. You make sure all your body is sapped for the carbs for the 3 days leading up to it. And on the day of performance, you make sure you put plenty of carbs with lean protein and some fats in there as well, okay, for the extra energy source. And there's other things we can put in the mix for performance, okay, but afterwards, you're going to go carbs and protein, sugary carbs with complex and lean protein. What can we do in performance-based things with a long performance? So if we're talking about runners in terms of marathon, we can put things in between. So fast absorbing stuff that doesn't take any blood away from the muscle or very little. Things like branched chain amino acids, liquid protein, protein that you can drink. It gets processed very quickly and keeps aiding the repair process while we actually run. Glycogen, okay? So we're going to look at dextrose. Dextrose is sugar. Pre-workouts have things such as like taurine, beta-alanine, all things that oxygenate the bloodstream that keep the body working nice and happily. So we're kind of like topping the system back up. There's also water in there, so you won't have to really consume much water around it, but that in the performance base, good. And if we're talking about hypertrophy, okay, performance for hypertrophy, the number one thing you make sure you do when you're training for hypertrophy, which is muscle building, is mind to muscle connection and making sure you understand mechanics fully and your full range of motion. Okay, so we do a lot of hypertrophy here, which is muscle building, if you want like layman's term and such. Okay, we do a lot of functional and cardiovascular work, but generally the hypertrophy we concentrate on more. This is mechanics of the body. Okay, so if you're going to train hypertrophy, trying to take the confusion out of it, start with the basics. Okay, 101 stuff. This, if I do this in consultation, I'm going to do it now, so somebody might think me do this. This is a pivot joint, okay? That is a pivot joint. This is a swivel joint. The body has all different joints and that do different things. Understand them, okay? But understand the muscles around it that allow them to do that. Also understand you must connect with the muscle from its start of the muscle, to its end of the muscle. So if I do the standard tricep press down and get it wrong, that's my joint activating, okay? I have not activated the muscle properly and it comes back up. Now it's done its full range of motion in this particular angle of exercise. So the tricep can work from here and it can work from there. That's its longest, that's its shortest position. We're going to go halfway between the two. Okay, so we're going to work here. With a cable press down. So I don't know if you want to, tell me if you can see it, Josh. No, wait.
Yeah, can do. I'm going to need a little bit of a more of a side angle though. Just here. And I'll go back a little bit. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, good. Now, let's do what I've just done. Okay, I'm going to push down. I'm activating my joint. No. What I want to do is from the top of the muscle, I think, right, the muscle starts here and it goes down to there. I'm going to push through this side of my hand, the little finger side of the hand. And when I look at where that aligns, it aligns up the outside of my arm. If I push through the index finger side of my hand, it aligns to the inside of the arm. So I'm going to activate the long head of the tricep more. I want to focus on this part of my tricep. I need to know that, okay? So I tense my shoulders. Why? Because I engage the origin part of the muscle where it starts. I now can feel that engaging between my shoulder and the actual tricep head here. And I push down, I let the muscle tell me how to do the move. Okay, so this is for hypertrophy, so it's not performance work. It's kind of still performance based, but this is growing muscle now we're talking about. And as I push down, the muscle tells me to push it away, round and down and engage up with the wrist. Okay, and I do the same on the way up. If you look at what happened then, okay, I was actually rounding within the muscle. Okay, rounding within the muscle, and the muscle told me how to do that. Now get this in there 100%, okay? Do not try and cheat this rule, do not try and break this rule. It's one of the most important rules when it comes to growing muscle. I know what's happened. Anyway, right, so if you don't do this, okay, if you don't do this, you're just going to let other muscles get involved, okay, or joints or ligaments and tendons. You want it to go in this way. You want the muscle to activate. You want the tendon to activate, and then as the joint actually moves, the ligaments and joints do their job. That's the order it should be, okay? Don't let it go the other way around. When the joint starts to activate, the tendons and ligaments are under stress, and the muscle really isn't doing that much. Okay, super important. Mechanics of the body, right? So pressing in the body. When you press away from it. When you row, you pull into it to fully contract. If I look at pressing motion, okay, I push away. The reason why I do that, it keeps my shoulders back. I imagine I'm pushing myself away from it, and I fully engage my chest. Not going to go into too much detail in terms of how we engage the chest and things, and in terms of the filament movements of the chest, which are very, very small. Okay, it's actually a flying movement of the chest. It does have fibres that run across this way, so flying movements. It also has a pressing movement. But when you press, you've got to imagine you're kind of like flying at the same time. If you're holding a fixed bar, you kind of like snap the bar and pull the elbow joints towards each other, keep your shoulders back. So what we're getting here is when you're training for hypertrophy, you need to think about them particular things more than anything else at first. Yeah, in terms of exercises, but don't start getting advanced with your exercise until you understand mind to muscle connection, the length of the muscle, where it works from, where it finishes, and the actual shortest point of it, tricep in its shortest to its longest. Where you're pushing from in your hand, if you're going to be doing the upper body, to where it aligns to in the actual arm or in the chest. I'm pushing through lower part here. Okay, if I press through my palm here, that press is going to come out the back of my hand, and it's going to not go into my arm. I want it to come down here, into my arm, into my chest. Okay, when I'm rowing, wherever my elbow lands on my back is where it hits my back. Okay, then we have spination of the wrist. I do things like this, and because I'm doing that, I'm putting out wide. So I pull out wide, I actually hit the middle part of my back. Okay, so when I come in close like this, that's the width. Sorry, when I pull out wide, I'm coming to the middle part of my back. Look where my elbows are landing. Wide, width, middle. Okay, spine out of wrist, it kind of does the reverse. Come here, good dog. Yeah. Yay, Logan! Anyhow, so that's that. With nutrition, with hypertrophy, this is all in a nutshell as well. Okay, this is very 101 sort of stuff. When it comes to nutrition, hypertrophy, okay, now. Yeah, it's a bit of a, yeah, I'll go to Alicia's question in a second. When it comes to like hypertrophy and nutrition, just make sure you've got plenty in the mix, i.e. like plenty of carbs and plenty of lean protein beforehand. Try and keep about an hour and a half or 2 hours away so it's fully absorbed into the body, into the cells, so it's all very nice and ready to roll. Fats aren't a massive issue to a point, I mean, they can grow intramuscular fat, but if you're a carby person or utilising carbs for muscle growth, just go with protein and carbs before, and definitely protein and carbs afterwards. It's the same principle for performance afterwards. We want quick hits and spike out of pancreas, so we go glucose, sort of carbs, sugary carbs with complex coming in afterwards. You've got a session a bit, sorry. You want the same process as a performance person, really. Oh, imagine how attacking a dinosaur. Okay, so but with the rest of your nutrition, you've got to feed it. Put carbs into the mix when the body requires it. Simple, okay? Top your glycogen cells up, so you're feeling a bit shaky in the day, means your blood sugar level's low. When you're hungry, proteins and fats. Depending on how far you want to go in terms of bulking, that can get a bit confusing, but if you're natural, you're not indigenous or any which way. So natural is when we don't put anything into the body. Indigenous is if someone's putting steroids into their body, okay, because that way they don't have to worry too much about nutrition base. But when you're natural, you have to not overcook it with the carbs. What will happen is if you overcook it with the carbs, the cells spill over, your water retention starts to go up, and so is your estrogen levels at the same time. We want to keep the test high, okay, so we want to keep the anabolic system just right and just nice. That's called a lean bulk as such. And when you feel like your tummy's putting unnecessary weight on, so you're keeping your nutrition good, it's been pretty good for about 3 or 4 weeks or whatever. The dog's now chewing up the dinosaur over there, if you feel like you're putting unnecessary weight and you haven't really changed much, that means you're becoming insulin deficient, okay, or resistant, which means your cells have kind of like had enough of absorbing and your pancreas is getting a little bit bored. So do a mini cut, things like that. Mini cut into like just come off the carbs for a while, so about 2 weeks that and feel like the body fat starts to reduce a tad. Feel like your testes come back up, so things like libido will pick back up, and it's a sign that your test is starting to take back over again, because you're taking nutrients away and your body fights tooth and nail to look after muscle mass. And what it will do to do that will push up your test. What does testosterone do in the system? Several things. Gives us good nitrogen retention in the muscle, makes us more confident in the brain, so we can do a little bit more. When you feel like your libido is dropping or your sense of confidence is going, so is your testosterone generally. It's why guys are thought you should have theirs test, because it goes quite drastically low there if they've not been training all their life. Okay, and what happens, they go into a bad mental state, i.e. they get a bit depressed, and all that sort of stuff. We're not going to talk about that now. So we can't talk fully about nutrition, what you should be eating and when too much, because it goes a lot deeper than what I just said. But performance-based and how you should be kind of training for your specific goal, okay? Just think about mechanics, think about the connectivity of the muscle, and then think about what I said in terms of like making sure you are putting enough nutrients in to actually aid that particular sport. So we haven't really cleaned up in terms of the confusion. I don't know, maybe I've made it a little bit more.
Confusion, isn't it?
There's always confusion.
Always be confusion.
It's a personal preference when it comes to all this. You know, you need to work it out in terms of how you feel. So how you feel is super important. Like I said, if your glycogen levels are low, don't be following a formula. Go and put some form of carbohydrate back in your system with a lean protein and such. Your body's asking for it. You may be more anabolic to the next person. So don't be following certain things such as like formulas. Follow yourself, listen to yourself. Your metabolic outrate might be different from one day to the next, which is how much activity you do in the day. Okay, so one day you could be more to the next, i.e. you're going to need a few more carbs in the system, okay? But always keep your protein high, keep your fats high as well, but also muck about the carbs a little bit. That's your changing gear stuff. Don't just put unnecessary carbs in because you think you've seen someone eating loads of carbs. If you are indigenous, again, you can eat to the end of the earth, and your eating levels will still kind of go up, but your test will stay high as well, so you'll still grow muscle from that as such. You're not going to go down the indigenous route. He's really ripping it up.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Can I give a delicious question?
Yeah, go for the delicious question. You can do that whilst I'm going to... Come on.
Sorry, that was the description. So she said, "Hi Darren and Josh, I'd love to hear more about how to correctly balance macros to find the sweet spot and manage cravings."
Okay, again, so this is what I just said a second ago, so making sure the body's kind of what I said. I can say, oh, you're moaning. Okay, so we need to make sure we're listening to the body. Now, if you're going to eat rubbish all the time, okay, your body's going to get serious cravings because it's kefubble and it's looking for certain things. If you eat the right nutrients and right combinations at the right times, really theoretically you shouldn't get that much in the way of cravings. Sometimes we get visual cravings, sometimes, oh, I remember I used to like that, and then you just fancy that. That's kind of fine, but if you're getting cravings all the time, it means your body's lacking in something. Okay, vitamins and minerals are super important, your electrolytes are super important, electrolytes are zinc, magnesium, and copper and things like that. Multivitamins, D, B12 and stuff, okay, make sure they're in the mix. Vitamin C, super important, splits red and white blood cells, lower cortisol levels, that can get rid of the cravings. So when our cortisol levels or stress hormones high, we generally get cravings for carbs. So it's important to listen to these things, but again, if you're going to make sure your nutrient combinations are timing are correct, so again, nutrient combinations will be as this. Nutrient combination should be protein and carbs, or protein and fats, and protein and carbs and fats when the body's in a calm state. You want to make sure your carbs, if you're in a performance base or looking to grow muscle, are before, with a lean protein before, and afterwards. It's the best time to put your carbohydrates. More sugar afterwards with complex. Okay, that's kind of nutrient timings. Then we listen to the body. If at lunch you're craving more sugar, put a little bit of complex carb in there with a lean protein. That will get rid of the craving, the body's asking for it. And then generally, as long as you're putting the right timings and so about another 3 hours, saying you should be actually kind of looking to get hungry again. Listening to the body, don't ignore it, otherwise if you ignore it, your cravings will get worse and it will look for things such as like sugars, which you just generally do because that's what happens in our brain. I need something fast, a packet of crisps, a sweet, whatever, okay? But otherwise, generally, when you think like, you know, my sugary sort of feelings dropped, I don't feel irritable, I just feel hungry. Just move to proteins and fats. Try and drink more water as well. You should be drinking at least 2 litres a day minimum. If you're training more, you should be drinking more than that. Please don't knock the camera over. Come here. Let's get under there. Okay, so getting rid of cravings is all about understanding what you're craving, and generally it's sugars with people. And if it is, and you're quite active, give your body some form of carbohydrate. Okay, keep it a complex carb, so I like things like oats, rice, potatoes and things, because if you give it an instant spike, a fast one, it will drop, it will keep getting them cravings. So when you're actually craving stuff, it means your body is lacking, like I said. So make sure your proteins and fats are together at the right time of day, generally away from your workouts. Your proteins and carbs should be around your workouts. Your vitamins and minerals should be in place at least 2 or 3 times a day. So if you're not eating enough vegetables and things, okay, you want to make sure you're supplementing with vitamin C, B12 and D3s. That will help with that as well. And if you're not getting enough cucumber and stuff, which hold a lot of electrolytes, make sure you are actually supplementing with electrolytes like once or twice a day. They're super important. Okay, so hopefully that makes a bit of sense.
It's also important to, like we said before, especially for weight loss purposes, incorporate cheat meals every now and then, isn't it? Yeah. Because sometimes if you're being consistently clean the whole way through, let's just say a 2-3 week period, you could start to kind of resent that over a long period of time. You're just thinking, you might be seeing the results, but I miss the meals. Not all the time, no more than really once or twice a week sporadically, because that will really revamp your metabolism, won't it? It will boost you.
So look forward to it.
Like Darren said, it'll give you something to look forward to. So positively, mentally, that will help you. And it'll also, your body will take something out of that that's lacking a little bit from you neglecting it with regards to being good with your nutrition. So everyone's is a little bit different. I know ours is probably a little bit similar. It'll probably be a high protein meal, fat, carb meal.
I always have protein.
Fat and carbs, that sort of thing. Like maybe like a substantial meal in terms of like lunch or dinner. For yourself, it might be just like a little simple snack and stuff like that. So it's very important that once you've been good for a sustained period of time, 3 to 5 weeks, allow yourself to have cheat meals. The body will look for it. It will help you mentally, and 100% it will help with your goals essentially.
So I generally, a lot of people will say to us they're not really craving much in terms of like they're not really craving much if they've got their nutrition on point. If you get it slightly wrong at the wrong time or neglect it a little bit, you will start getting cravings back. And as Josh says, always have a cheat meal at least once a week, especially unless always have a cheat meal at least once a week. Give you something to look forward to. Okay, although you should be liking your nutrition anyway to the point. I enjoy mine. I generally have a cheat meal. I think wish I didn't eat that, but otherwise, just have a cheat meal. Give you something to look forward to. Makes you feel guilty, revamps your metabolism, and it will take something from it you're ordinary not having. Maybe you just haven't had enough sodium in the week or something, which is salt. Okay, maybe you haven't had enough sugars in the week, which is obviously glycogen. Okay, so it will kind of like chop all that stuff up, just naturally, and it will ramp your metabolism, so you'll lose more weight if you are in a weight loss mode. And if you're not in a weight loss mode, it will just refeed cells, okay, and it will just, you'll lose a little bit of weight. That's okay to lose weight, and if you're in a bulking phase, it doesn't matter to the point as long as you're eating enough to fuel the muscles and make sure they're growing. So if you want to talk about protein just quickly and tell how much protein you should be eating, okay, you want to be at least 1 to 2 grams of protein per lean pound of body weight. How do you work out a lean body weight? You weigh yourself on scales, okay, then what you do is you look at your body fat percentage. If you're not sure what that is, go online and look for women body fat percentage pictures or men body fat percentage pictures, see which one you look like the most, and then take that percentage away from your lean body weight.
Do your body weight.
Yes,
body fat's a body fat because like
this is the best one, isn't it? Calipers don't work very well. Okay, so once you kind of like deducted that percentage from your actual weight itself, that's how many pounds you should be timing up by your 1.5 grams. Roughly, I eat about 300 to 325, maybe 350 grams of protein a day. I drink a lot of water and stuff. That's how much my body desires to actually continue to hold muscle mass. I know it's not. So but in terms of actual protein's king. Protein's king all the time. You'll just grow muscle just from eating protein, but you put the other stuff in the mix at the right times, you will definitely grow muscle. Your energy will be happier, your mental state will be happier. Okay, when we're in a deficit, i.e. when we're actually losing weight, it's a little bit tougher, so losing weight's a bit of a harder thing to do. We're putting our body under a bit more stress. When we're growing muscle, we're not as much, we're in an anabolic state. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense. So if you're losing weight, your body will crave a little bit more because you're going to neglect it a bit more with certain carbohydrates. Unfortunately, that's just kind of the way it is. But even still, if you get it just right, okay, you shouldn't be craving too badly. Thank
you very much.
Okay.
That's episode 2 done. We'll probably put out what we want to do in this description like we've done today in this video.
Might
But
do.
like, yeah, might do. Like Delisha done, just comment, obviously like, subscribe, that sort of thing.
Anything you want to know.
Anything you want to know about, just put it down in the comments and we'll try and get back to you.
The thing is with the podcast, we try and keep them short, so sometimes we're rambling a bit and maybe we're skipping certain stuff or not going into 100% full detail. But if we did 100% full detail, we'd be here for about, I don't know. Everyone's personal, everyone's slightly different. Okay, you're one fine fingerprint university, you're not another person like you. So please don't just follow formulas or the person next door, whoever you're training with. Just listen to your body, understand what it desires and requires for specific things, such as like for training for hypertrophy or performance. Like we just talked about, try and re-listen again and say, okay, I need a bit of this and that, and then listen to the body. Okay, listen to it. If I need a bit more, that was too much. Okay, that's just about right. I recovered just right. Okay, I didn't feel like I performed very well, so I need a bit more carbohydrate beforehand. Okay, and when it comes to cravings, again, listen to it. If it's asking for saying, can you eat good macronutrients, i.e. protein, fats and carbs at the right time, give it what it wants. If it's sugar, glycogen, shakiness, give it some glycogen, give it some carbohydrates with lean protein. If you're just hungry, move to protein and fats. And that should kill the cravings. All right?
There you go.
There you go.
Right. Bye.
Out.
See you later.
Bye.